So, a ceasefire has been announced. After 40 brutal, destructive days of war between the US, Israel, and Iran, you'd think there would be sighs of relief, right? Maybe even some celebrating. But no. Instead, what you feel is this deep, heavy suspicion. So, what's going on? To really get the answer, we have to look past the breaking news and dig into a much deeper story of history and, well, a total lack of trust. And this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it. This isn't some government official talking. This is an ordinary person on the street in Tehran. And it tells you everything you need to know about the mood on the ground. There is zero faith that this pause in the fighting is anything more than a trick, just a temporary deceptive move. Okay, so let's just paint the picture here. It's April 2026. You're in the capital of Iran. The war has been absolutely devastating. We're talking at least 1,900 people killed in Iran alone. But when the news of a ceasefire breaks, what happens? Pro-government demonstrators are out there chanting, "Death to America, death to compromisers." The regime, which had promised this glorious total victory, now has to try and explain this sudden stop. And the people, they're just left angry, confused, and wondering what on earth comes next. To really understand this bone-deep mistrust, we have to start with the war itself. Because this wasn't a conflict that ended with a clear winner. It just stopped, leaving everyone with this nagging feeling that the whole thing was for nothing. In fact, you could say the stated reasons for going to war were a total failure. When this whole military campaign kicked off, the goals were laid out very clearly. This wasn't just about random strikes. It was about achieving three specific strategic things that would fundamentally change Iran's power in the region. Now, what's so wild about this is just how big the gap is between what they wanted and what they got. Okay, goal number one, stop Iran's nuclear program. The outcome? Iran made zero new promises. Goal number two, end the missile threat. Well, get this, Iran was still firing missiles at Israel after the ceasefire was announced. And that big hope for a regime collapse? Nope. The regime just adapted, shuffled some people around, and kept right on going. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When a major military operation doesn't hit its targets, things don't just go back to normal. It creates a brand new, and often a much more dangerous reality. And this right here is that new reality. For Israel, the war's failure means the old way of thinking, just managing the risk, is dead. It's over. According to analysts, any future deal can't be based on promises anymore. It has to be about physically dismantling Iran's entire nuclear machine. These new red lines are so much harder, so much less negotiable than anything that came before, which makes the idea of a real, lasting peace feel, well, almost impossible. But look, this war didn't just pop up out of nowhere. The failed goals and these tough new red lines, they're just the latest chapter in a much longer story. To really get why the trust is so broken, we have to rewind and look at the ghost of a deal that haunts all of this, the diplomatic collapse that really paved the way for this war. It's a crazy paradox when you think about it, right? I mean, the whole point of international diplomacy over the last decade was to avoid this exact situation. So, where did it all go so wrong? Okay, let's just walk through this timeline because it really shows you the dominoes falling. In 2015, you have this landmark nuclear deal, the JCPOA. Awesome. But just 3 years later, the US just walks away. By 2025, with Iran ramping up its nuclear program in response, the European powers trigger something called snapback sanctions. That's a fancy term that basically flipped a switch and put all the old UN sanctions back on Iran. Boom. The deal is officially dead. From Iran's perspective, they got betrayed. From the West's perspective, Iran cheated. Either way, the door to diplomacy slammed shut, and the door to war swung wide open. And that's the key word for this entire story right there, trust. The JCPOA was never just about centrifuges and uranium. It was supposed to be the first step, a foundation for building confidence, for proving that deals could be made and actually kept. Its collapse did the exact opposite. It took what little trust there was and completely torched it. And, we've seen this movie before. This quote from nuclear expert Siegfried Hecker is just chilling, because it draws a perfect parallel. Back in 2002, when the US walked away from a deal with North Korea, what did Pyongyang do? They went full speed ahead on building bombs and missiles. The consequence was a nuclear-armed North Korea. It's a powerful reminder that walking away from a deal, even a flawed one, can create the exact nightmare you were trying to avoid. But this breakdown of trust isn't just an international story. A huge huge piece of this puzzle is found inside America's own divided house, where political fights at home have massive consequences around the globe. So here's the thing. Trust is a two-way street. For any country, especially an adversary, to sign a long-term deal with the United States, they have to believe that piece of paper will still mean something after the next election. And honestly, that's just not a safe bet anymore. And this Gallup data shows you exactly why. Look at these numbers. Over the last couple of decades, both parties have just gotten more and more rigid. In 2005, only a third of Democrats called themselves liberal. Now it's over half. For Republicans calling themselves conservative, it's jumped from 63% to 75%. When you're that polarized, a major foreign policy achievement for one president becomes the very first thing the next president wants to tear up. And as you can imagine, experts are really split on this. On one side, you've got scholars like Dr. Jordan Tama who say that, hey, when it comes to a common enemy like Iran, both parties can usually agree. But on the other side, Dr. Rachel Myrick argues that these deep divisions at home just completely destroy America's credibility. I mean, how can another country possibly trust a treaty when they know it could be shredded in 4 years? So this brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this might be the most important one. This whole crisis, it isn't some new shocking event. It's just the latest turn in a repeating, toxic cycle of mistrust that has defined the US-Iran relationship for over 40 years. You know, researchers have dug through declassified documents, and what they found is pretty stunning. Since the 1979 revolution, basically every American president and every Iranian supreme leader has, at some point, tried to secretly open a door to talks. But every single time, something goes wrong. And here it is, the cycle. It's like a trap they just keep falling into. It starts with deep public hatred. You know, the death to America chants on one side, threats of regime change on the other. Then step 2, behind the scenes, you get some secret outreach, because both sides realize they might have something to gain. But then, inevitably, step 3, it all gets derailed by decades of baked-in mistrust and political pressure back home. And the result? They snap right back to being enemies, only now it's even worse than before. The JCPOA and its collapse, it wasn't something new, it was just the most dramatic, most painful spin of this same old wheel. And so that leaves us with the ultimate, nagging question. After 40 years of this destructive pattern of hates, secret talks, failure, and then even more hate, what in the world would it take to finally break the cycle? Is there any diplomatic path left that can survive the politics? Or is the mistrust now so deep, so fundamental, that the cycle is just doomed to repeat over and over and over again?